Let's take a moment to talk about some more advanced things that we can do on the busking side of things once we master our playback layouts. One thing I do is I use macro system to manage my colors, because that's something that's always changing on the fly. So for example, if I have a couple systems up here, right now I'm in a no color system, but I could easily grab and make my rig red and blue, or green and cyan, various colors. And this is all done using a system of macros. I can also invert those colors here using a little tool that I've built. So let's take a look at those macros. I have a whole bunch of other systems here that rely on very similar concepts, such as my focus tools and stuff like that. So taking a look at the macros, this is all based on a target copying system. So basically, I have my 10 base palettes, and then I copy them to a third palette that is used and referenced everywhere else in my show. So for example, this first button here that's no color is taking my color palette 1, which is my no color palette, and it's copying it to color palette 101. Similarly, if I go down to this other no color palette, which is 121, right? So this is 101, 121, easy to remember. It's taking color palette 1 and copying it to color palette 102. So if I look at something like if I want to make my rig red and blue, I'm using macro 102, which is copying color palette 2 to color palette 101, and macro 122, which is copying color palette 2 to color palette 102. So what that means is then these are all recorded into my base. So if I look at my base queue in a more advanced file, let's take a look at what that looks like. So in my base look, I actually, if I toggle my data to go inside of this preset, you can see that it says red and blue. These are actually referencing color palettes 101 and 102. So watch what happens. As I copy these references, what's nested inside of this preset is going to change. So if we wanted to transition to like an orange and yellow look, if I just run the macros that copy these targets, it's going to change inside of that preset, which then reflects on stage. These are also used in another cue list. I have it here mapped to fader 7 on page 2, so cue list 27. And if I look at this, these also reference those same color palettes, color palette 101 and 102. And there are two cues. There's one that has every other in 101, 102, and one that flips them, so it's 102, 101. But what that allows me to do is it takes my base colors and it automatically puts them on their handle. So now I can jump back and forth and easily toggle between these looks. And if I change my color scheme, let's say I wanted to go to green and blue, now that's going to refresh and my toggle refreshes and allows me to jump back. So it's just one more thing I can do on the beat. And if you combine this with a movement effect or something like that, it's really dynamic.